Ryzen 10800X3D is going to be the greatest gaming CPU ever. But before I get to that, I'm going to save you some money. Intel is in some serious trouble and AMD is working with giants. Welcome everyone to Gamer Melt. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, 4th of July is here, and with it comes a massive sale on Newegg. As you can see here, there are tons of items on sale, but I thought I'd quickly go over some of my favorite, and of course, if you like anything that I show you, or you just want to check out the sale yourself, I will have affiliate links down in the description below. They don't cost you anything more, and it helps the channel out. Starting things off, we have AMD's Ryzen 7 7800X3D. If you remember, not too long ago, this CPU was actually selling for like $600-700, and I actually think that was right around when the 9800X3D was releasing, and even shortly after. Well, it's now on sale for just $369.97, and it comes with a free 1TB SSD. Obviously, the 9800X3D is currently available, but for over $100 less, it definitely is a great price. Next up, we have a 27-inch ASRock monitor. This bad boy is 180Hz refresh rate, IPS. This is one thing that I really like about it. Yes, it is just 1080p, but it's got IPS, HDR400, FreeSync, and it's just $107.77. Now, if you're okay with a VA display, they also have a 27-inch. This is still 1080p, but it gets up to 240Hz refresh rate, and it also has a slight curve to it, and this one is just $104.77. Moving on, we have Samsung's 990 Pro. This is a 4TB PCI Express Gen 4 M.2 SSD for just $299.99. So $75 off, not a bad deal at all. Finally, if that's not enough storage for you, we have Seagate's Enterprise HDD, a whopping 16 terabytes, 50% off right now, just $300. And next up for today, Intel is in some serious trouble. Now, I know a lot of you who watch my videos are AMD fans, but this really is bad. It would flat be terrible if Intel went away. Simply put, competition is what drives innovation. We can all try to be mad that Intel seemed to keep things stagnant in the market for years, but the simple fact is that any company would have done the exact same thing. Why would a company spend billions of dollars on R&D to make better and better products when you have no competition? You're basically doing that to compete with yourself. Without Intel, Ryzen would have never been made. Without Ryzen, Intel would still be churning out 4-core processors like they did for so long. So keep all of that in mind when I go over this story. As you can see right down here, the chief executive of Intel is considering stopping the production of the company's 18A fabrication technology, which is their 1.8 nanometer class fabs, to foundry customers. Instead, what they're doing is they're shifting the company's efforts to its next generation 14A manufacturing process. This is supposed to be their 1.4 nanometer class fab. It says this is in a bid to secure orders from large customers like Apple or Nvidia. This is a report from Reuters. And the wild thing is the fact that this is literally the second node that Intel has done this for. And I'm talking the second time in a row, meaning the company is clearly having some major issues with their fabrication, whether that's getting it out on time or just having an issue with performance. I don't really know, but this definitely looks terrible. In fact, Intel themselves responded to this Tom's Hardware article where you can see it says, quote, "We are not going to comment on market rumors and speculation." And I'll go ahead and say that if this weren't true, there would be a massive incentive for them to tell us. So the fact that they aren't saying anything really leads me to believe that this is true. They further go on to state that, as we have said previously, we are committed to strengthening our roadmap, delivering for our customers, and improving our financial position for the future. Apparently, if this happens, obviously it's going to be really, really bad. You can see here that it says the proposed adjustment could result in major financial consequences and alter the trajectory of Intel's foundry operations, as it will effectively withdraw the company from the foundry market for several years. Basically, I very much hope this is not true, but from everything I've seen, it absolutely looks to be the case. And if it is true, things are looking far worse for Intel than I think anyone knew. And next up, if you remember in a recent story, I discussed the fact that Microsoft is planning to use AMD for their next-gen Xbox hardware. They obviously use AMD in their new handheld as well, and ultimately, it was a story about a very close partnership between AMD and Microsoft. Well, it looks like AMD is playing all sides of the field because we now have new information on further partnerships between AMD and now Sony. So there's actually a couple different stories from this, but it ultimately comes from AMD's Jack Hoon and PS5's lead, Mark Cerny. And apparently, the collaboration between Sony and AMD actually brought us FSR 4. It's called Project Amethyst, and it actually began back in 2023. And it was that partnership that brought us FSR 4. But it's also bringing us Project Redstone. Remember, that will bring machine learning-based frame generation and ray regeneration. Not only that, but he confirmed that FSR 4 is set to replace Sony's proprietary super resolution technology. So it's clear that AMD is hard at work with Sony's own engineers. But it actually doesn't stop there. Because also according to all of this, you can see right down here that Mark Cerny claims that AMD is, quote, moving extremely quickly on its next generation graphics tech. Now, you might notice that Mark Cerny is from Sony. How would they know that? Well, that's because, according to this whole interview, Cerny revealed that there's a lot of crossover between Sony and AMD in co-engineering efforts of, once again, Project Amethyst. It says, quote, big chunks of RDNA 5 or whatever AMD ends up calling it, apparently even Sony doesn't know what they're going to call it, are coming out of engineering that I am doing on the project. Basically, it's clear that both AMD and Sony are working hand in glove on AMD's next generation architecture, and not just discussing it, getting ideas or anything like that, but it really sounds like Sony's engineers are working closely to develop the whole thing. And given the fact that AMD is also working very closely with Xbox, developing all of their chips, we could start seeing a shift in games preferring AMD's tech over Nvidia's. Simply because a lot of games are built for consoles first and then ported to PC. Either way, this is definitely getting me excited for next gen. And speaking of next gen, AMD's next gen CPUs are seriously looking better and better. This time we're focusing on next gen X3D. But before I get into that, we have a small update on IPC. So this originally comes from Moore's Law is Dead, and as you can see, it claims between a 6 to 8% higher FP IPC, and that FP is for floating point. Before you freak out, this is specifically floating point, and it's not even the final floating point, so this doesn't include gaming or anything like that. Moore's Law is Dead believes it's going to be at least 10%, but don't forget that next-gen CPUs also get more cores. And this brings us to X3D chips. As you can see here, this source says, and I can confirm 96 megabytes of cache per V-cache layer, and that your prior leak stating Zen 6 can stack multiple layers is correct, meaning we could see 2 stacked layers of 96 megabytes, and that coupled with the 48 megabytes that are supposed to be on the chip itself, we could be looking at a total of 240 megabytes of L3 cache on their next-gen X3D chip. Not only that, but we could also be looking at a 12-core CPU for the entry-level model, meaning the Ryzen 7 variant. Remember, that's the fastest variant because it only uses one chiplet, so it doesn't have to worry about cross-chiplet communication. Now, during gaming, it hibernates those cores, but it still takes a bit of resources. And with next gen, AMD is set to release 12 cores per chiplet, so this would be the single chiplet CPU. Not only that, but according to Moore's Law is Dead, AMD is planning to replace their Infinity fabric with bridge dies, so that should lower latency. Basically, next gen Ryzen CPUs are set to be the best gaming chips ever.